Good morning, good morning, good morning. Oh, I'm so excited for these bonus two sessions that we are having today. Two amazing interviews coming up for you today. And first of all, I want to apologize for confusions with time. I had different days and times written down in different places, and there was different information going out in different places. And oh my goodness, that's okay. We just um, get to come back to the last email that was sent to you, and I have shared it in the Facebook group. So we're going to have the gorgeous Anna Kowalska is joining us at 10 o'clock this morning, and then we will be live with you again with Rochelle at 2 o'clock this afternoon, but I will be coming in at 1:40. So the correct time for this afternoon session is 1:40, and I'm excited to see you there. So the bonus sessions for this second series of the Reconnection Revolution, where we are looking again at or continuing to look at reconnection to others. And just before I move on, I just wanted to reiterate that I don't actually see the comments. For those of you that are tuning in via the Facebook group, say good morning. I am so thrilled to have you here. And just, if you leave comments, if you have insights, anything that you want to share, just letting me know that you're here and you're tuning in means the world to me. Leave that in the comment section in the Facebook group, and I will definitely come back and check in there after this interview's finished. So in connection to others, what I wanted to do with this session before Anna joins us is look at what causes us to hold ourselves back. And there are different reasons based in fear. But one of the things that Johann Hari talks about that I think we really need to address is childhood trauma. There's been lots and lots of talk about childhood trauma over the last year or two. Oprah brought out a book a while ago called What Happened to You. Obviously, Johann talks about it at length in Lost Connections, the fabulous book that this series was really born from, that inspired this series. Brene Brown talks about shame and vulnerability. That's her whole work, is as a shame and vulnerability researcher, and for very good reason. So when we look at any situation where we're thinking to ourselves, what the heck is wrong with me? Why do I keep repeating this same behavior? Why do I keep doing this? Why can't I just get this right? Stop repeating this behavior. There is a clue there that it may be linked to childhood trauma. Now, this was a subject that I really was quite hesitant to talk about. And there's many reasons for that. One is that the whole conversation around I'm not qualified, which so many of us hold ourselves back from talking about difficult conversations because we don't technically hold a certificate that says I am a psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist. So I want to preface this conversation with I am qualified to talk about my life experience and how childhood trauma has shown up in my life and has influenced different behaviors, different thought patterns, different beliefs, different addictions. And in sharing my stories and my experiences, I hope that as you read through the different things that come up with other people, you will start to see threads. And in everything that the work that I do, the conversations that I have, the women that I support, I always like to give the visual that this is about a gentle unfurling. It is about coming into full bloom. And as we allow ourselves to gently look at these things as they arise, gently discover the things that are causing us to hold ourselves back or repeat behaviors that we know don't serve us. We can look at these through the lens of what happened to me that makes me keep wanting to do this. Because if we look at it through that gentle, loving lens, rather than what the heck is wrong with me, we can allow our nervous systems to relax and start to see possibilities where we have had things happen to us in our childhood, in early adulthood, right the way through our lives that influence our behaviors. Earlier this year, I had a very, very jarring dream. And I believe it was one of those experiences for me that was, that we get these taps from the universe. It's like, it's time to stop ignoring. It's time to stop putting your head in the sand and not wanting to look at these things. And I'm not going to give you the details of the dream because it was particularly unpleasant and horrible. But the story that it brought up for me, the awareness, the clear link was years ago. I heard how they train baby elephants in zoos to not break away, because when you see a full-grown bull elephant or female elephant that has the power, the strength, everything that they need to break free from a chain around their one ankle to a stake in the ground, and you think, why on earth don't they just break free? It's because when they are babies, when they are young elephants, they get this chain around their ankle to a stake in the ground that they don't have the strength to break. And so the belief system is implanted in their brain that they cannot break free. And so the bigger and older they get, the more entrenched this belief system is, and they stop trying. They don't even consider that it is a possibility that they can. And this dream that I had was so jarring, and it was quite violent and horrible. And it left me absolutely shaken. And in meditation, in taking the time to, rather than thinking, I just want to forget this, I never want to think about it again, I don't want this in my head, I allowed myself to look at, what is this dream trying to tell me? What is this dream trying to tell me? And it really was and is that awareness of all the belief systems that I continued to carry that have held me back from so many experiences in my life, and the ability to connect more deeply with other people. So for the purposes of this conversation and why I'm talking about this in the Reconnection Revolutions connection to other people conversation, is that there are belief systems, there are ways of behaving that are influencing our ability to connect more deeply with other people. One of the stories that I felt was the one that came up that I wanted to share in here, because I think we can get very caught in the idea that the experiences have to be something violent, a sexual trauma, or being beaten, or severely neglected as children, or like these things that we create as a bigger picture in our mind. And then there are things in our minds that we make, oh, that's so silly, how could that possibly be something? I'm so daft, I should just let that go, surely I'm over that by now. These are the insidious little things that we feel shouldn't be a conversation. I'm a grown woman now. Why on earth would that be something that I'm still, is that tether to the stake in the ground that is holding us back. And often, if not always, these things are tied to shame. And the horrible thing about shame is that it is that we don't want anyone else to know. It's embarrassing. What will they think about me if they hear this story, if they know this is something that I experienced? So I'll share this story with you because this is one of my stories that has had that energy for me. And it is tied to being about 13 years old and heading off to boarding school for the first time. And heading off to boarding school far away in the mountains from where I lived. And it was where I went to school, we had sort of 3 campuses. There was a primary school, there was a year 9 experience, and then there was secondary school. There were 3 separate campuses. So this was heading off to year 9. I was about 13 years old, and most of the people I was heading off to boarding school with are people that I had known for many years before. And I had a very, very, very bestie friend, my bestie friend, Kate, and we had been best friends for years. She was at boarding school where our primary school was, and her family lived in New York, and they had a holiday house in Anglesey, which is not far from where I lived, still live now. And she, while her family were in New York, she was at boarding school, primary school, and she would come to our house many weekends and holidays, and sometimes her family would come over from New York and I would holiday with her family. We did everything together. I got up to all sorts of mischief. I still remember sneaking out in the middle of the night, all sorts of crazy things that we got up to together. So absolutely best friends. And so I arrived 13 years of age to my first experience of being a boarder far from home for year 9. And she would no longer speak to me. From day one, she turned her back on me. And I have no idea to this day why. But something happened, and it's not about her being a bad person. There was something in her environment. We are all a product of our environment. This is something that I talk about a lot, and I really encourage people to understand this. We are all a product of our environment. It's not about people being good and bad, right and wrong. It's we make the decisions because of the environment that we are in, that we have been raised in. So whatever the reason was, she turned her back on me. And I had been one of the most popular girls in school, full of confidence and self-assuredness and all the bits that allowed me to have a pretty fabulous primary school experience. And then in year 9, suddenly she had turned her back on me and had befriended lots of the other girls who all, as a ripple effect, turned their back on me. And the bewildered, very alone little girl that I was didn't know why, didn't know how to fix it, didn't know what to apologize for, didn't know how to change things. So slowly and surely it shut down. I built great big thick walls of fat all around my body and great big thick walls of don't come near me energy. And that stayed with me for a very, very, very long time, for many, many years. That was the rest of my schooling experience. I can still remember getting into higher years. I think probably year 11, I would have been about 16 or 17, and 2 girls in their infinite wisdom and care sitting with me in boarding school saying, if you just lost the weight, you would be so pretty, you would be so popular, you would, the boys would like you. And we do this to each other. If you just did this, if you just did that, if you just smiled more at people, if you just lost the weight, it would fix everything. But when we look at the weight loss industry, or we look at the therapy industry, and quite often we are looking at the symptom, we're not looking at the cause. And we can see this everywhere. So when we think about childhood traumas and the things that have happened to us that stifle and paralyze our ability to connect with other people more deeply. You know, where we're going to be talking about meaningful work and finding our soul's purpose. These things happen when we allow the gentle unfurling of all the programming, all the little traumas that we have made insignificant in our minds, but are very significant in our wiring, in our biology, in our cells. These are the things that cause ill health. We've looked at the profound effects on our physical, emotional, and mental well-being from loneliness. Why do we get lonely? What causes loneliness? What causes people to shut off from their communities, from their families, from their co-workers? And so often it is tied to things that have happened to us that we feel should be, why am I still making this a big deal? Why can't I just move forward? Why do I keep repeating this same behavior? These are the things that we get to just gently. This is not about ripping off a Band-Aid and exposing a great big wound. This is not being in situations where the shame gets to have a spotlight shone on it. This is about making sure you're around people that you feel safe to discuss what has happened to you. People that you feel safe to share your story with. And your story is not for all ears. Your experiences are not for all ears. The work that I do now, my ability to share my stories, is because I have surrounded myself with people who have allowed me to safely expose all these shame stories so that they don't hold the weight that they once did. So the invitation is to think about, who do you feel safe with, to start having these conversations. Because when you start connecting with other women, you will start hearing other stories. And as we share our stories, we give other women permission to share their stories. Stories of boyfriends that cheated on us, or stories of sexual abuse, or stories of parents that we feel did this or that. And as a parent, I had a running joke with girlfriends. I had two very dear girlfriends that were raising their children. We had a community of 10 children. It was my 4 and 3 in one family and 3 in another family. And our 3 families spent a lot of time together, all country kids. And we became like one big family. And there was a little bit of a running joke that we called it guilthood rather than parenthood. It's like all the things that my kids will need therapy for, that I wish I had known better. If I had have known better, I would have done better. It's the journey of parenthood. And we get to give our parents the same grace. If they had have known better, they would have done better. Having faith in that. If they had have known better, they would have done that better. So every teacher, every coach, every friend, every parent, every sibling, every co-worker, perhaps the healing starts with this understanding. If they had have known better, they would have done better. And we can give ourselves that same grace. If I had have known better, I would have done better. And as I know better, I will do better. So in this brief introduction, if you take nothing else away, I encourage you just to write those sentences down, because I can promise you that I bought this book from Oprah when it first came out, but it took me a long time till I felt called to read any of it. So if you are ready to hear this conversation now and do something with it, you can. If not, it'll just be a seed that gets planted, and when the time is right, the gentle unfurling gets to begin. All right. So we have with us today the very gorgeous, the very fabulous Anna Kowalska. Anna, welcome, my beautiful friend, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Hello, Edwina. Oh, I'm so excited. I caught a few minutes of your conversation and I'm just like, right place, right time, perfection.
Yes. So Anna has been in my world for quite some time. Those that have been following me for a while, I've interviewed Anna before, and I'm just trying to remember. I think it was for Unleash the Audacious Woman Within. It feels like a good fit. So Anna, so I just wanted, I pulled something off your website that I just felt, I don't normally read introductions because they're so dry to listen to, but I pulled this off because I have a great love of language, and I feel like we can hear things, we can read things, and the words just kind of slide in one side of our brain and out the other. But what I read on your website was so perfect that I wanted to read it. And so I'm going to just give those who are tuning in the invitation to actually listen to the words. Don't just let them slide through. So after creating traditional success in life and having it disappear for the third time, Anna decided to put all her focus and energy into discovering and living her soul purpose, co-creating her success with Source. I love every word of that, Anna. I love every word. So why don't we, as a starter for this conversation, invite people to hear that story, share that story of how that little bubble started your journey.
Yeah. Yes. And then I'll tell you what's bubbling up as a result of what you are sharing too, like what really wants to be talked about. But sure, I'll share a little bit of my story. So I was born and raised in Poland. Monika, are you Polish? Yeah, I recognize the name. I'm like totally Polish. I was born and raised in Poland, and there was no conversation of like doing something that you are meant to do or sole purpose. I grew up Catholic, so the conversation about God was all about church. And I came to America as a teenager, and things just happened. Like in my 20s, I all of a sudden found myself in this amazing like lap of success. I mean, money, I was about to get married and a dog and houses and this and that. And I'm like, literally dream come true. So before I came to America, what was famous on Polish TV was Dynasty, 90210 and MTV. And all of a sudden I felt like I was living in like that expression. I'm like, wow, people really live like that. And I thought okay, I'm supposed to be happy. I'm living the things I used to watch, and this wasn't supposed, like, how did it even happen? Not even that it's not supposed to, but how did it even happen? I'm supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to be satisfied, but I wasn't. I wasn't happy. I wasn't satisfied. And I walked away from all of it, threw the baby out with the bathwater and just started from scratch. And 2 more times, I knew I was meant for very tangible experience of prosperity, money. I knew I was meant for it. It just felt good. It felt good in my bones. So I went for it again. And again, I created success, money came in, and I made one decision and poof, went away. And a third time when it happened, and I made like, I know better now. At the time I was telling a story, something happened. It was the I was usually caught in the cycle, like the mortgage cycle, like the this wave, that bubble, right? The bubble burst. I was usually caught in those. And I'm like, I can believe that if it happened the first time, second time, but the third time I got to look at it. And the third time I said, something is really off. If I can create this, but can't hold on to it and don't want to because it doesn't feel good. And that's when I started asking bigger questions of like, if this doesn't work, if this is not life is all about, then what am I missing? And I started getting messages. People came into my life. I was listening, like summits weren't popular at the time. Once in a while, you could catch somebody's webinar or something like that. And I started to tune into spirit and yoga and meditation and crystals and anything I could put my hands on. I began to immerse myself in something that was intangible. I started to read books. I started to journal, and little by little, although not so much little by little, it kind of started happening pretty quick.
Yep.
I realized that we are living more than just this human body with this, skin and bones and life as is, and these just things just happening. I began to understand that we have control, and not even control, but we have a way to influence our experience, that we are co-creating it, that we are more than just physical beings. But then if we are more and there is this oneness, then why do we need all these people? I started asking, because I know we're talking about connections, right? Yeah. So I was talking about connection to myself and something bigger first. First, it was something bigger. Then it was connection to myself. And then I said, why do I need all these people? Like when I'm here by myself, journaling and praying and meditating and talking to God in a non-religious way, because I started healing my religious wounds. Nothing wrong with religion, but I was very broken around God because of religion. So, I did all the healing. I moved past the goddess. I no longer talk about it as goddess. God has no gender. It's a neutral ever presence. So when I got to connection with all of that, and I was really happy all by myself in a room with my crystals and my journals and my cards and my conversation with something else. Why do I need all the people? They just mess everything up. I'm happy by myself. And that's when I started doing the work, the transformation through which you and I met, actually, in that space of transformation. And I started to look at, well, the reason why other people exist is because, and this is very metaphysical expression, there is the ever-present being that's expressing itself in different versions of itself, that it couldn't experience itself unless it is in another being. So in other words, if I just walk around planet Earth like one being all in itself, that I can never experience, first of all, myself, because I just am what I am. Like anybody who's watching right now, tell me if this is true. You can do all the healing, everything is great, you feel really, really good, and then you get into a relationship or you have a conversation, and all of a sudden you're like, things flare up in your face. Oh my gosh, I didn't work on that. Like just like you were talking about, Edwina, right? All of a sudden, memories are coming up from childhood. Like, oh yes, I remember when Jane left me as a friend and she totally broke my heart, and I don't want to have friends anymore. All of a sudden, those things don't matter when you're sitting in a room by yourself. But when you begin to connect with people, it's the reflection of things that we get to look at. That's what other people are. It's just expressions of other things that are not me. And sometimes they are a mirror, so I can see exactly what I don't see in me. So my journey led me through although I think as a kid, I knew more than I know. I just think it wasn't okay to know. Yeah. I got into a very tangible, gotta make a living, gotta make a life, gotta be, a responsible adult being, got into that, created it, didn't work. What else is there? And that's when I began to do the work that I'm doing now, first with myself and then with other people. And there is this saying that, of course, this moment, I can't remember who it says, you will always have what you need as long as you help other people get what they need. And that landed for me differently when I look through the lens of spirit and oneness. I'm like, yes, the thing that I need, I will have as long as I help other people get what they need. Why? Because we get what we give away, right? You know that, you've heard that. We get what we give away. But it's really difficult to live like that, especially when your heart is hurt, when it's broken, when you've been living with a wall because people have trembled all over your tenderness, and then you got to pay bills.
Yes. I have a feeling that was what bubbled up. Is that you said at the beginning, it was like, I'll tell my story, but then there's something that's bubbling up. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't skip over something that was in your heart. Yeah, it endlessly delights me, baffles me. I'm not sure. There's a few bits, but the way that when I have these conversations, the way that the universe, God just delivers exactly the right pieces so that the conversations just all make sense together. It's this trust in, it's interesting. I still stumble over saying God. Similarly, from being raised in, it was Church of England for me, and going to church and never feeling a connection to God, and always seeing God as a male, this kind of patriarchal figure, and this great judge in the sky that's like, you're getting everything wrong and you should feel sorry for your existence and for being alive. That's my experience of God. And it's interesting, Laurie and I, my husband and I, watched Eat, Pray, Love again last night. It's just one of my favorite movies. And when the main character, when she gets to her knees and says, sorry, I've never spoken to you, God, but just tell me what to do. Like every time I watch that scene, it makes me want to cry. It just makes me want to cry. That connection, knowing that you're not alone. And
it's so can I segue into something else that was bubbling up?
Yeah, please.
So, we are in this great awakening, right? There is something happening for humanity. We are in a moment of great awakening. We cannot compare our experiences to our grandparents or even parents, because there was no luxury at the time to sit down and look at our feelings. You kind of just did what you had to do. I mean, again, I grew up in Poland. My parents were generation that was born right after the war. My grandparents were running from, bombs. There was no luxury of looking at feelings. And that's true for Europe. That's true for wherever we are. There are different things happening and have happened. But I think for the first time, and it's happening for a reason. For the first time, at least in most parts of the world, and I know there are terrible things happening, but some of us, those of us who are here in this conversation, hopefully are safe enough to be in this conversation. We're not running away. Our life is not being threatened. We feel like we are in danger, but that's all because we're processing our fears, right? So we are in a global awakening, and eventually the whole planet will catch on. But right now we are aware that it's what's happening. And one of the things that we are awakening to is that connection. And one of the things that will be happening actually in this moment when you and I are having a conversation, the way the planets are set up, and if you play it all with astrology and human design, I play with all of those systems. Right now, we are in this shedding of our attachment to the tribe. So we're moving from tribal to individual. So when we speak about connections, we grew up, most of us here, I will say all of us, but let me leave room for those who don't want to believe it. Most of us grew up in some kind of a conditioning of the tribe. If you behave this way, you will be okay. You will be loved, you will be fed, you will be housed. That's as children. We'll feed you, we'll love you, we'll support you, we'll keep you safe, right? Most of us, to some degree. And then when we grew up, we learned that if you are in this community, the community will take care of you. Behave this way, and the community will take care of you. Right? This could be the family we were born with, or maybe a church, or maybe an association, or maybe culture, whatever it is. We grew up with some kind of a belief that if I do what this entity of people wants me to do, this unspoken or spoken agreement, be like this, then I will be okay. And very often it extends into don't connect, like do not associate with those kind of people. In my work, because I'm all about purpose, it's if you do this, then you'll get paid, then you will be okay, you'll have food and you'll have place to live, right? To some degree, all of us have grown up in some kind of a spoken and unspoken agreement. Stay connected to us that way and you will be okay. For some people, even when they do, because I do a lot of work around money too, for some people, even if they have made an agreement and said, listen, my family is no longer supporting me, meaning they are not being supportive of what I do, they are not being loving towards me, it feels like it's dangerous every time I talk to them, not because they want to hurt me, but because their beliefs are going against everything I am healing. Even when you already decide you're no longer talking to them, they are still living up here and in here.
Yep.
And that where we are right now is shedding all attachment to that tribal connection. They need to be some way to be supported, taken care of, provided for. And we are stepping into, I can provide for myself, take care of myself, love myself, support myself. Doesn't mean that I am all standalone, lonely boat, and it's all on me. But you know what it means? And just stay with me as I like share with you this jump. As I separate from all the conditioning and attachment to my tribe, all the ways that I said I will be like you, verbally, in my heart, in my mind, in whatever way. As I separate from it and stand alone and begin to understand that I am a sovereign being, sovereign meaning I am not attached to you by money, by beliefs, by any kind of obligation. Oh my gosh, parents and children, elderly parents and children that are like, our age, and parents expecting us to take care of them. Like that's a whole other bundle of attachment that we get to untangle. I saw this post the other day. Parents, your children owe you nothing. And I so agree with that. Like nothing. So if we choose to do it, so let me just not be so cold-hearted. I'll come back to lovey-dovey, okay? But hold on, let me just tell you what's happening. So as we can separate from all of this, and as we can begin to stand alone and say, I don't need you to love me. I don't need to be any way for you to love me. I can begin to see myself as a sovereign being. Begin to recognize some ways I came here to be, some purpose I came here to fulfill, some lessons I came here to learn that are usually about detachment from how I was conditioned. Now, from this place, I will begin to find a new connection to people that are connected to me, and I am becoming connected with them at the soul level, soul agreements that are to collaborate as the individuals coming together, not because we have to, not because we need to survive, but because we are choosing to collaborate together. And now we are in a whole new conversation about what prosperity looks like, what self-expression looks like. I don't need you to be any particular way for me to be happy. And you don't need that from me either. So I'm going to be however I am, and you're going to be however you are, and we're going to come together. We're going to create something, whether it's a relationship, partnership, marriage, children, business, whether it's a client relationship, whatever it is, we're going to come to create something. And then at some point, maybe we'll decide to go our separate ways. Maybe it isn't just two people. Maybe it's a whole community that will exist for something, for a purpose. But it's not from, oh my God, I better not say this, because if I say this, they're going to throw me out. And if they're going to throw me out, I'm going to be lonely out there floating without any help or support, sucking on something that's going to provide me some, hopefully, substance so I don't die. Yeah. So now can we then come back to those that we have been conditioned with? Yes, absolutely. They could be healing with us. It doesn't mean we have to leave them behind, but there is now a new relationship. It's not a codependence. It's not a conditioned behavior. It's not a conditioned way of being. It's acceptance and seeing each other. Yes, Mom, I love what you said before I got on. I heard you say this. Yes, Mom, you did the best you could. You looked at me funny once and I decided I could never live up to your expectations. And for the rest of my life, I tried, but I failed over and over and I felt like I'm never good enough. Mom, I know you really didn't mean that. And you did the best you could. And then this is all the way to like tragic experiences where, you know, parents really do inflict some terrible, and I'm sure you've heard those too. When people come to us to heal, they share some really stories that are like just baffle my mind, but they did the best they could. And I did the best I could. Now, can we create something new? No, you have to be this way. I don't know what got in your head, but you better get it out. Well, I'm sorry, then we can no longer be in a relationship. I'll send you a Christmas card. Yes, I would love to have a different conversation. I don't know what it looks like. Can you help me? Of course, it won't be pretty. I may have to say some things. You're going to say some things I'm not going to like. You're going to probably get angry. I may get defensive, but we're going to remember that we're here healing something. Now we can come back and be in a partnership as two unique beings, almost removing the whole, I'm here because you're my mother, or because you're my father, or because you're my brother, or because you owe me something, removing that out of the equation and beginning to see each other in a different way. Now we can deeper connection. And now we can create a whole new experience of being who we were meant to be. That resonated. I'm glad. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And that's the world that we are creating. And believe me, it won't be pretty because a lot of people will kick back. A lot of people are clinging to the life support that they believe the tribes are. Now, by the way, tribes could be, like I said, a family who you were born into, a community, could even be a government. Yeah. People can hold on to government and structures in some way and say, oh, they're going to help me, so I better act this way. And if I act this way, they're going to give me money. I don't want to get into the deep holes, but there was a lot of manipulative behavior not so long ago that actually indicated that if you do something, we'll do something for you. This is going to deepen and deepen, I don't want to get into political, but that kind of behavior will deepen because the energies will begin to pull us to the connection to the tribal. And it's our job to stand sovereign and say, you know what, my connection to myself is most important. My connection to the, whatever you call it, universe, source, the ever-present being that I call God, but I know it's really just the energy that flows through everything that creates everything, including me and you. Yeah. That's the most important. And then when I connect with others, it's from a pure place. I don't need anything from you. I just want to co-create with you. Isn't that beautiful?
Oh, it is. It is beautiful. It is really beautiful. And this, you know, I always turn to the natural world when I'm trying to sort through these things in my mind. And when I think about it in that context, and I feel like I could go off on a tangent on that. But the one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I'm always looking at stories from my life to help people see how these things come together. And I had an experience just in the last week. My elder sister, Philippa, died when she was 49, and they had her 40-year school reunion, interestingly, at this boarding school that I started the conversation of this particular interview with. And somebody sent me a photo of her picture. They put her picture up at this school reunion, and my response was not gracious because she was so severely bullied and traumatized in her year at that school. And it makes me angry. And that's that tribe, that should thing, that if Philippa was alive, I know she wouldn't want to be there represented in any way because her life was incredibly miserable that year. And these are these threads of shoulds that we see inside institutions. School is something that so many people have enormous trauma that they still carry from their school experiences. But yes, inside families and extended families where we feel like we should be there, we should be loving everybody, we should accept hugs and kisses from people that have been cruel to us. And so your conversation of the individual not being connected to these pieces is very profound.
Yeah. You know, if one survived childhood, and I'm going to say survived with quotations, if one had a childhood perceivably without any wounding or deep wounding, school will definitely bring it up. school was another place where like whenever I look at, and I had a great childhood. I grew up in like, most people are like, I grew up in a great childhood. There are things, but there are still conditioning that I grew up with. There are still things my parents did. I love when you said, wow, having conversation about feeling guilty, like, wow, if I knew better, I would have raised my children differently. I don't know if our humanity is set up that way. I think so. One of the tools that I use, again, tangent, one of the tools that I use to help people remember who they are is hand analysis. And there is this idea that there is a challenge we came here to grow through. It's like it's chosen at the soul level. And it's going to keep showing up in our life, always just to show us that there is somewhere we are off base, right? Like there is somewhere we are off our path. And without a fail, every single time I look at somebody's design, the lesson was exactly what they learned because of the family they grew up with. It's like, I chose the family and the environment to learn this thing. So now I can keep overcoming it and getting stronger through its expression showing up in my life. So for example, if somebody grew up being rejected in some way, and they are here to be an artist, which is like a classic. You're here to be an artist. You're here to be creatively expressed in a spotlight, but you grew up in a family that rejected your individuality and your creativity and your light. And then when you realize this, you will then see a string of experiences where you were rejected. A lot of them will be in school, in school environment. And then you will go on until you become aware of it. You will keep experiencing it until then you become aware and choose something different. But the reason why I say this is because it's family. Yes, it starts in early on. We know it's like, we know right now it's 0 to 8. That's what we know. 0 to 8, we are the most formative. And everything that ever will happen to us to shape us will happen then. Everything after that is just a reflection of it. And in school, a lot of it will come. And the memories that people have, it was true for me and many of my clients. Let me know if this is true for you, Edwina. It's a lot of times it's in school that we have acquired our painful stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 But interestingly, for me, I have 0 memories between 0 and 8. None.
Mm-hmm.
None.
Yeah. 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 So it happens in school a lot. I mean, that's one of the ways that we are conditioned to be a certain way, to behave a certain way, to show up a certain way, which for most of us, it's against who we are. So it's definitely public school. I won't speak to private because I've never been in private school. I've always been in public schools in Poland and in America.
So I think it's opposite. Here, public school is government school, where I think it's the same. I thought it was in America. I thought it was different.
No, private school is privately owned by some kind of governing, but privately governing entity.
Yeah.
And then public schools are public, free, government. Yeah. But whether it's a public school or private school, I think it's pretty similar. So without speaking about schools, there is definitely conditioning that happens that could have us begin to understand that we are connected by a tribe. Cliques, right? Like in school, like you better be like these kids. I want to belong to a clique. I want to be like these girls. I'm going to dress like this. I'm going to speak like this. I'm going to whatever, right? Like when I came from Poland to America, I came straight to Long Island, New York. And it's a very cliquey environment. And I barely spoke English. And all of a sudden I was like, whoa, I have to choose how I dress so I know what group I belong to. And if I choose it, will they choose me back? So a lot of it happens. So then we grow up and we are these adults trying to create something in the world, feel good about it. But so many parts of us are already conditioned to, wow, don't wear that. Don't dress this way. Don't wear your hair this way. Don't show up this way. Don't say that. So it's very difficult. And then connections are not genuine because why? You're connecting with people because they accept you for something versus genuinely connecting. Wow. Very rarely do we find people who are willing, more and more these days, but still very rarely, where they're willing to just say, you know what, you can say anything to me. I will not be offended.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very rare. Very rare.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we begin to heal all of those conditioning, all of that conditioning, all of those stories, all of those ways that we decided to be some way to stay connected to the tribe, now we can begin to own who we already were born to be. So in my work, I call it purpose. In my work, I call it your unique expression, some way you came here to be so you can serve humanity in some way.
Yeah.
So purpose in my work isn't like a thing you do, and when you do everything, angels come out, play trumpets, and lay out a red carpet. It's not like that.
That might be
Actually,
that might be the bonus after.
there might be a bonus after one day, right? But seriously, it's like, it's not like that at all. It's actually when the real work begins. Because why? Because you are facing all the ways you didn't allow yourself to be genuinely who you are. It was true for me.
Yeah.
It's still true for me. I still find I am deeply immersed in transformation. I'm deeply immersed in spiritual work, and I still constantly find layers of me that I am deciding it's not okay to be, that I judge myself so other people don't judge me. I'll judge myself. I'll stop myself because I'm afraid you're going to judge me if I be that way.
Yeah. And there are, you and I have been through the same leadership training, and my experience of that transformational process was very jarring. I didn't, I came out of that experience feeling like somebody had ripped off a Band-Aid and I was this exposed wound. And it took a lot of work after that for me to get the benefits from it. And it's, it was all experience that was very valuable to me. But the way that I like to talk about it with women is it doesn't have to be that way. There can be this gentle unfurling, and it really is a matter of being very selective with the people that you surround yourself with and the environments that you put yourself in.
For sure.
Which comes back to what you were talking about before with
And
so,
it depends how sorry, I'm gonna just say this. And it depends how quickly we want to see, we want to live differently, right? So it really is such an individual choice. So here comes another, and I know you wanted to ask me a question, but here comes another dilemma. We want to see something different in our lives, but we are afraid to face, and we are afraid to pay the prices. We are afraid to be exposed. And I'm not saying that that's not, that for some people, it will be a very, very gentle road that needs to take a long time, maybe for some people. So it's definitely discernment, right? It's definitely judging for yourself, but it's so difficult judging these days. Why? Because we live in a very noisy world, and we are just beginning to enter the era where most of what we see is going to be fake. With artificial intelligence, I already can't tell half the time if a video I see, like, I'm a real person. I know that. I know you're a real person because I met you. But when you look at some celebrities, you can no longer tell if it's a video they made or if it's artificial intelligence and created a video. So as that keeps expanding, very soon we won't be able to trust what we see, which is why discernment will be so important. So knowing yourself, so this is the connection, being truly connected to yourself and knowing what's appropriate for you, and then being okay if you get it wrong is going to be increasingly more important. So as we leave the tribe, we'll want to cling to something. We'll want to, because we felt so attached, like we wanted something. We felt like our life, so it was our life support. Now okay, here I am, sovereign me, the individual. I'm learning who I am, but oh my God, I so want to be part of something. And I may choose something that is not the best choice for me, just because in that moment I feel the pain of that standing alone. And sometimes it may be the best choice and sometimes not. So, and there is no quick answer, right? You and I know that there is no quick answer. This is why this work is so important. And this conversation is important. Can I be a source of connection for myself so I don't cling on to something just to feel like I belong? Yeah.
And I feel like it's a little bit like going through a maze. I'm a real visual person, so my brain always comes up with a visual. And I think it's like going through a maze, and you can get to a spot where you get to an end where you can't go any further that way. And it's not the wrong path. It's simply an opportunity to turn around and take a different path. And the beauty of doing work with other women that have done this work and are maybe one or two steps ahead is that you get to stop running into quite so many no way forward markers.
Yeah, you can spot it faster. You can ask, you can be asked questions, because it's one thing I can ask myself questions, but when somebody I trust that I do work with, like my coach, my mentor, asks me a question, different parts of me are answering, because guess what? I'll only ask myself the question that I'm willing to answer, because we are tricky like that. I am asking the question and I'm giving the answer. Of course, I'm going to ask the question that I'm willing to answer.
Yeah. And we will hear things when we're ready to hear them. You know, I think there's great value in being exposed to these conversations, exposed to conversations about childhood trauma and the effects that they have. And if we're not ready, we won't hear it. We'll hear it, but it just kind of gets tucked away. And then the universe will keep presenting opportunities to hear it in different ways, and eventually it lands. It's interesting. I got an email from somebody that's been in my community for several years, and she wrote to me and she said, you know, I feel like it's finally coming together. And that's just this kind of hearing things in different ways from different people. It's why I love to interview people, because we'll say essentially the same things, but it just comes out in different ways. And somebody will hear it from you, or somebody will hear it from me, and it just kind of lands eventually.
That's the beauty of being our individual expression. That's why there are so many people. Remember what I said, like, why do we need so many people? Well, because there are different expressions of the same knowing, but there are different experiences, different soul path, different way of experiencing the same thing, maybe even, but every single person that expresses, it's sometimes even saying the same word will land differently because of the energy that it is being transmuted with.
Yes. Oh, I'm getting my brain.
What did you want to ask me?
I can't. I've got a few things written down that I was going to cover just in case, but I should have known. I probably didn't need to write anything down. The conversation was just going to go where it needed to go, which it has. So I think, you know, you talk about uncovering the path to living on purpose. So maybe if we just follow that thread and see where it ends, and then for this conversation, and then those that want to connect with you to continue that conversation can do so. So how about we just, if you want to share your thoughts there.
So when I began to ask, okay, all of those things that the world I lived in deemed as successful didn't feel good. By the way, the body of my work is called Sacred Success because I know we are all meant to be successful. We can all choose what it looks like, and that's what the sacred part is. And success defined by the old paradigm, meaning you have a certain amount of money, you have a certain job, you married forever and ever, and you have this many kids and they thrive, and you know, you pay your bills on time and you have money and all of that. Oh my God, who made all of it up, right? But we have a certain vision of what success looks like. And if our life is a little bit off, then we immediately say, wow, I'm such a failure. But we don't even know what this picture we are striving to live up to looks like anyway. But we have a certain picture. So when I began to do the work and I discovered that what was missing was my connection to this other part of me, my soul, the spirit, this being that is this energy that's flowing through all life, the connection that is woven through every single thing in our experience, not just this planet, but galactically speaking. When I began to discover that, I said, wow, the sacred means that I walk my life with a certain reverence. Doesn't mean I never get pissed off. Doesn't mean I never curse. Doesn't mean people don't get me angry or that I don't do things that I wish I didn't do. But I walk with my life with a certain reverence. That means the work I do, and the biggest amount of time we spend is not on sleep. Some people think sleep because we're supposed to sleep 8 hours a day. The most amount of time that we spend as we are alive is in our working hours. Right? So that's what I started to focus on. And money is so important. So I started to focus on like, well, what is this part that is missing? And it was purpose. It was doing a work that wasn't just for the millions. It was doing the work that was for the millions in my heart. And then that being reflected in my bank account and in my lifestyle, but both have to be present. And that's when I started to ask purpose, purpose, purpose. And the only thing that I was finding was it looks certain way. My purpose is something I do. I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher, I'm a writer. Like it had a label and it fit in something you could define and put in a bracket and put a description and you were set. And that didn't work for me. Meaning that didn't fit what I was discovering. It's just something was so off. So the definition that I eventually came to, it's first of all, it's not a static thing. Our purpose isn't static. Our purpose is a journey. It is a path that once we consciously, and this is a crucial part because unconsciously we are still on it and we'll be getting clues and we'll be learning things we need to learn, but it's unconscious. Once we become conscious of it, then we can start making better choices directly aligned with this path I am on. So my purpose isn't a thing, a destination, one day when, then I'll feel, no, it's actually choosing this path and saying, I actually said this when I first became aware of it. I said, I may not truly know what my purpose is until my last breath, but if in my last breath I become aware, I will be fulfilled. Luckily, that has changed a little bit because I have found out that for all of us, we already are living our purpose. We just have to become conscious of it. So we can begin to sip from the fulfillment while we are engaging. Anybody in any line of work, even if it's completely misaligned with what they came here to fulfill, can find their stream of purpose in it and then shift into work that's more aligned. But rather than thinking it's a destination, and when I get there, I'll have all the money, I'll have all the love, and I'll have all the rest, and I'll have all the fulfillment and a joy and a pleasure. No, you'll never get there. You have to start finding how you are on purpose now. Begin to see it, and then walk the path. And that path that merges more and more and more with something that feels right. Doesn't mean it's easy, doesn't mean it's angels and, trumpets and butterflies and money flowing from the sky, standing under the water flow of money. You could, if you believe that it's possible, but it's really a journey and it's a path. And so many people want to know what their purpose is, but they don't realize that once you become aware and you choose the path, you will be consciously tested, and you will be tested by the parts of you that haven't been willing to live that, because it was against what you believed about yourself or what your tribe believed about you or what it was okay to be or not be. That's when the real challenge begins. That's why a lot of people will say they want to live their purpose, will do like all the exercises and look at all the charts. But when you tell them, and I know because I work with people, they'll still say, okay, well, that sounds nice. Let me go back to how I was being. Because if you choose it, the real work begins. But this is where fulfillment begins too. And the ease doesn't come from, oh, I know everything to do and I just show up and I do the thing and I walk away and I jump and I, skip in the fields of butterflies. We are not meant to live that way. Monica loves my explanations. Because we live in this delusion. We really live in this delusion. Our joy and our fulfillment comes from overcoming something that we weren't up until then willing to. And when I face it and when I'm willing to say, you know what, it's okay for me to be this way. It's okay for me to feel proud of myself. It's okay for me to say this thing. It's okay for me to show up messy and for people say whatever they want to say. And I still believe in myself. That's when we truly begin to feel the fulfillment and the joy. And that's when we become magnetic to the people we are meant to be connected with. That authentic tribe for the time that we are in.
I feel like if we go back to that kind of schooling or the early childhood conditioning that we get, there is so much conditioning about putting our happiness at some arbitrary point in the future. When I make this money, when I have that qualification, when I get married, when I have a house, so we put happiness on hold for when it's that destination, and suddenly we're there and it's like, why don't I feel as happy as I thought I would, because there's something else on the horizon. So when we continue to think like that, it becomes this arbitrary point, like you can never touch the horizon. And so
right, yes,
the success formula that I use and I love other people to take on board is something that you can use for what's happened right now, 5 minutes from now, a week, a year. And the success formula is this: I am proud of who I am. I am proud of what I do, and I am proud of how I do it. And we can tweak that within a 30-second time frame. If you lose your banana with somebody that cuts you off in traffic and you yell at them, it's like, am I proud of who I am right now? Not so much. So let me just kind of rein that back in. And it is a success formula for life.
Yes. Yeah. And it's okay to have measuring. It's okay to have milestones. It's okay to say, you know what, this is what I want my life to look like. So I will move in that direction, but I'm not going to wait to feel fulfilled and happy and joyful until I get there. I'm going to feel that while I'm moving there. It's one of the manifestation steps, right? Feeling that way you want to feel while you are on the way to where you're going.
Yeah.
So, and where we are, I don't know if you speak about that in your series, but the energies on planet Earth are less and less supporting us being not who we are meant to be, meaning not thinking the best of ourselves, diminishing our light, being somebody who somebody else wants us to be, and just so we can hold on to something. The energies on planet Earth will support it less and less. So what will happen is it will feel challenging. Okay, so let me go back for a second, because I wanted to make that point that escaped me. So when we are moving towards, we are on our path for our purpose, and we expect things to be easy, but challenges still show up, and we rise up to the challenge. The suffering and the challenge that we actually have been living most of the time is fighting ourselves and who we are. That's the biggest suffering and the biggest challenge. That's the biggest pain point that then shown up in our dissatisfaction in relationships and dissatisfaction in our job and beating ourselves up for not being somewhere, because we were fighting something about ourselves. So to that point that we were just making, I lost that. Oh, well.
That's okay.
Then it floats on the little butterfly wings.
Do you know why it's floated? Because that's our next conversation in connection to spirit. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. That's okay. That's okay. It's like the little drip feed. It's like, come back for the next bit.
There you go. It's sitting here on the butterfly wings, waiting for the next one.
Exactly.
I do have beautiful flowers right by my desk. It's sitting right here on the sunflower waiting for the next conversation.
Yeah, I've got my lilies and next set of lilies that are waiting to open. I'm obsessed with them. Thank you so much, Anna. It is always just such a delight to connect, and I'm so excited for our next conversation.
Me too. We planted a seed.
Yeah, that's right. So for the women that want to connect with you about this conversation, what is the best thing that perhaps we can share with them, or a way for them to connect with you?
Sure. So I am on social media, Facebook and Instagram, at Anna the Manifesting Artist, at Anna the Manifesting Artist, N. And if you go to my website, I'm feeling called to share this. When you go to my website, annakowalska.com, and you can see my name right there, annakowalska.com.
I'll pop a link in with this. Yeah, I'll get done.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we'll do that.
I have a purpose prayer. It's a prayer I was given way before, when I was just beginning to understand that something wasn't in alignment. I was given this prayer by this woman who was she was this Russian woman living in Brooklyn. That's why I lived in New York at the time. And she was just so not the kind of person, we make judgment about people. And if I saw her on a street, I would just be like, she is this kind of a person. And then she leads me into this room in her house, and it's all crystals. And this is when I was just beginning my journey. And she had things hanging, and she gave me this prayer. And I worked with her for a year. I took a subway from Manhattan, uptown Manhattan to Brooklyn. It took me an hour and a half one way to take subways, and like 3 different subways to get to her. And I would go to her once a week for a year, and she would just work on my energy. And I'm sending her a prayer right now because I have no idea if she's okay, what's going on with her. Haven't talked to her in at least 15 years. But she gave me this prayer, and I read this prayer every single day. So when you go and just put in your name and email address, you'll get the printout of the prayer, and then you'll get an audio where I share it with my voice. Because I read it so many times, when I say it, it's imbued with the energy of intention. Imbued, I think that's the word.
Yeah.
It's imbued with the energy of attention,
Yeah.
of intention. So I'm just inviting you to pop in there and grab it for yourself and start using it so your purpose opens up for you.
That's so generous. So beautiful. Thank you, Anna. And I look forward to our next conversation. It's like I want to jump in there now, but we will be patient.
Thank you, Edwina. I love you so much. Thank you, ladies who are here and shared your energy in the room. Interacting with your faces was a gift to me. It's a beautiful way to share when you can see what lands. So thank you.
It is lovely. Thank you so much. All right. That's it from us today. So much love, and bye for now.